Welcome everybody to this new episode of My Data Guest. So today we will continue with this series of lessons on how to build an AI agent with a specific tools. So we saw already, help me here Alessandro, we saw already how to build an AI agent with n8n, how to build an AI agent with Crew AI, how to build an AI agent with LangGraph. I think that was it.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
And so today we are going to see how to build an AI agent with
n8n.
Okay.
And hopefully with no code at all. That's our goal. All right.
Okay. Take the floor from here.
Yeah, so if you know me, you know that I'm not a huge fan of n8n, but I am a fan. I'm using n8n for a lot of different projects and reasons. I think one of the most famous, because I was also advertising it a lot, is running n8n on my Raspberry at home. So I have my own n8n instance where I'm running some of the most important automations that I'm actually using at the moment. Some of them are for doing stuff with my maybe emails, with some models that I'm running on my Raspberry, so everything stays local. Some of the automations are just like simple things that I want to do on a weekly basis and so forth, so on. I think the best way to introduce n8n before diving into the agents is through the web page, because n8n is an open source software. And let me share the screen. Okay, so as you can see, if you go to the n8n.io page, you have all the information that you need essentially to install the tool. And the reason why I want to start talking about n8n with installation is because you essentially have two ways if you want to work with n8n. The first one is using the cloud. So they give you n8n as a service. So you use the cloud and you don't have to take care about the server part. So essentially everything comes to you as a service and you just have to use n8n, which is a web application. So you just go to a URL with your account and everything is saved, and your workflows and your data will be saved on this server somewhere. And this is one of the ways. Of course, you have to pay, because this is also how n8n is making money. If you want to use n8n in that way, you have to pay. Otherwise, since it's an open source software, if you want, you can just install it. Let's do install n8n, and we have, if I can find it, okay, self-host n8n, and we have the documentation here that tells you how to essentially install n8n on your machine or on a server if you want. This is really interesting, and I think if you don't know n8n, this is the place where you have to start. I really wanted to show you how to do it, because it takes just a few steps, and then you have an n8n running on your Mac, on your Windows machine, with no effort almost. So the thing that I want to do with you is the installation via Docker. So here you have all the information about installing it via Docker. The only thing that you need on your laptop if you want to start with Docker is Docker itself. You go to the Docker page, you install Docker, and then you're ready to go. And you're pretty much done with the documentation here, apart if you don't want to do something core with n8n. Let's say that we're pretty much done with it. And we can move to what I prepared for you, which is a Docker file for installing n8n. Okay, let me, all right. Now you see the terminal, correct? Okay, so now we are in a folder that I created on my Mac, and in this folder we have the data folder and the Docker Compose. This Docker Compose is what you need after installing Docker to run n8n on your machine. So you just do Docker Compose up -d. This will execute this Docker Compose YAML. It will download n8n, and then you will have n8n running on your machine, which can be eventually accessed via the localhost URL. Let's have a look at the Docker Compose. So the Docker Compose, it's minimal, and this is what you need to run n8n and to save all your workflow, to persist all your workflows on your machine. Here we have the information about the image, and then we have a couple of settings that you don't really have to touch, apart if you want to customize this file. And then the most important thing is that we're going to have two volumes, essentially this data folder and the node folder. We need this because I'm going to save some data on this machine and I want to access this data through n8n. And on the other side, this one is needed because I want to save the workflows and the credentials on my machine. Otherwise, if you don't have this, first of all, you won't be able to access data. Because if you want to access something from your local machine, from the machine where you're running n8n, you need to explicitly tell, in this case Docker, but then n8n, that you have the right to access this data. And this is how you do it. You use this parameter n8n restrict file access to data. And this is for persisting the workflows. If you don't do this, after creating the workflows and killing the instance of n8n, you will lose your workflows. So you need at least this. And that's pretty much it. So once you have this file, let's exit. With this command, you can run Docker. I already did it for you, so now I'm going to switch to Docker. Let's see where I have it. Here. So this is my local instance. As you can see here, the address is localhost 5678 port, going directly to the creation of the workflow. Okay, essentially here we have some information about the workflows that we have and the creation of new workflows. What you do once you have access to the web application, in this case, as I said, is running on our machine, you can create a new workflow. Once you create a new workflow, let me zoom in. Once you create a new workflow, you are in this new page, which is still running in on your browser, which is then running on your machine. And then you have access to all the list of nodes that are available in n8n. This part is not really connected to the agents itself, but it's more like a very quick introduction of what you can do with n8n. The first step is to add a node. You have a lot of different choices. We don't have to dive into what you can do with it, but you can imagine that if you want to connect to a Telegram bot, or if you want to send a message, if you want to create a workflow that is creating posts automatically for your LinkedIn account, or if you want to create a chatbot for a WhatsApp group, and so forth, so on, you have everything at your disposal. For instance, let's type Telegram. As you can see here, I have nodes I have first of all triggers, in case you want to create a trigger for an incoming message to your Telegram group. And then you have a list of actions, which means getting information about a chat, get a file, delete a chat message, and so forth, so on. These are all operations that you can do with Telegram. And as I said before, you can do the same with other nodes like LinkedIn, create a post, for instance. So the beauty of it is that you have a lot of different integrations and you don't have to think about it. So all these integrations are part of n8n. You can also create custom integrations if you want. But before creating custom integrations, you have to keep in mind that the most famous integrations are basically there for you. You just have to use them. So what I want to do with you is creating a very simple agent. And before diving into the real agents, so the real agentic applications where we have tools, where we use the memory, I want to create something simple that is mostly relying on an LLM instead of a proper agent. So what I want to do here is I want to read a file, and this file is already saved in the directory. And this is a CSV file with a list of feedback. So we have a name, a surname. I can already show you this because it's here. So I'm talking about this file. This is a very short CSV file. We have essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 columns: ID, name, email, and feedback. For each row, we have a feedback coming from someone. The idea is that I want to read this and I want to do some sort of sentiment analysis. So I want to ask an LLM, I want to ask this agent if the content of this feedback, which in this case is really short, but it can be really, really long, the content of this feedback is positive, mixed, or negative. And I want to leverage an LLM for this specific task. So the first thing we can do, we want to read the file. So to read the file, we just have to go here and select the node, read write file from disk. Here we have a list of options, and what you have to do here is simply write the the relative path of this file, which is in our case data, files, feedback, CSV, and we execute it. Now we are successfully reading the file, and we have this binary file here. This is exactly the file we were looking at before. So this doesn't mean we have a file we can really work with, because this is a binary file, and in n8n we are required to use this extract from file node, which is used to extract all the information from this binary file and turn them into a proper string eventually. So we use this extract from file. In this case, is a CSV file. It's data. You can also add information. You can also add properties like the delimiter, the encoding, and so forth, so on. The delimiter is a comma, if I remember correctly, so we don't have to do much. But of course, here, every time you read a CSV file, you have all the options that are used to every time you work with a CSV file. So now we execute, succeed, and if we want, we can also look at this table. As you can see, we have the table that we were looking at before in the terminal with a total of 9 rows and the feedback on the right. Okay, now we have our data, and it's time to send them to an LLM. Since I do have a bit of experience with n8n, I know that I cannot really use this as it is, but I have to do some sort of magic before, because you can imagine that what we have as an output is some sort of table. Let's have a look at it again. Or it's a JSON, but we're mostly talking about an object, not a proper string. Since we want to send it to an LLM, we need a string. So we need a string that we can embed into our prompt. So the next step is to use aggregate. With aggregate, we're essentially taking our data. In this case, we want to use all item in the data, and we will turn them into one single string. And now if we look at the table, we only have one element because it's one huge element. Now that we have one element, and once again, we want to do this because we want to embed the whole table into the prompt. One, of course, can argue that if you have too many columns, you don't want to take the whole CSV and give it to the agent into one single prompt. Eventually, you can also loop through all the items you have in the CSV file. This can be done with, I think it's loop over item. This is also another option. If you don't want to collapse everything in one single element, you can loop over the items and send multiple prompts to the LLM. In this case, we are creating one single huge item because we don't have a lot of elements, and we're throwing everything into the prompt. Now we are almost ready to call the agent. There would be one small thing we have to do inside the prompt, but essentially we are ready to call the agent. In the section AI, we have a lot of different nodes we can use. We have a generic AI agent, or if we want, we have this OpenAI node. The main difference is that if you use the AI agent, you're creating some sort of a high-level agent. Let me go back. As you can see here, I still have to set up this AI agent, as you can see. But what I want to show you now is that once you place the AI agent in the workflow, the AI agent node, you have to specify the chat model. So this is more like a general agent. It doesn't know anything about which model you're going to use, or which memory system, or which tool. And of course, we have to attach a model because otherwise it doesn't work. If otherwise you want to use the OpenAI model, it means that you are basically locked with OpenAI. In this case, it's more like an agent, a general agent. I'm going to put a prompt into this agent, and I can switch the model if I want. All right, so the chat model that we want to use in this case is OpenAI. And here, as you can see, I have this OpenAI account. I have it available because I created this before the demo. Essentially, if you don't have one, you just have to click on Create New Credentials. So if you click on Create New Credentials, I can also show you here, you will be shown this pop-up window where you have to specify the API key. That's pretty much it. And then you will receive also a message that everything is working properly. The API key is something that you need to get from an OpenAI in this case. All right. And then here in the model, you have a list of available models. For this specific case, I'm using GPT 4.4.1 mini but essentially you can use whatever you want. All right. So we have our model attached to the agent, and the next step is to use this agent. But before doing this, I want to also create a different branch with the OpenAI node that I was talking about. Let's use messenger model. This is a simple node where we create a prompt, as we're probably used to do, and then we send it to the LLM. So it's not really about using an agent, but it's more about sending a message to an LLM. So this prompt, okay, we're using the OpenAI account, messaging model, okay. We choose our 4.1 mini, and now we have to specify the prompt. So now we connect this to the message model. As you can see on the left, this is how it works in n8n. We have access to all the things that happened before this specific node. Okay, so here we have the credentials, we have our model, and now we have to create the prompt. As you can see on the left, there are all the things that happened before. So these are the input of our nodes, the previous nodes that we have attached to this messenger model from OpenAI, and we can access this information. For this specific case, what we want to access is the input of the last node, which is aggregate. This aggregate has this data. This is one single object where we have all the information contained in the CSV data, in the CSV file. What you want to do is simply write your prompt, something like classify the feedback is positive, mixed, negative, and then we provide the data based on this. And here we simply drag and drop the data into our prompt. And now we have the prompt with the data from the CSV embedded into it. There is one small problem, and this is that the problem is that this is an object. A very good practice is to click on this small button and look at what the final prompt looks like. So this is what we are providing. So what we are writing, classified feedback based on this data. And this is what we're going to send to the LLM. As you can see here, this object is not correct. And this is happening because this is an object. What I usually do is a very simple trick, which is using this JavaScript command, which is stringify. That means it's turning the JSON into a proper string. And as you can see on the left, now we have a proper prompt that we can send to our LLM. And this is a long list with all the information that we have in the CSV file. So now we are ready to call the LLM. This is the user role. Another thing we can do if we want to make this first simple agent even smarter is creating an assistant message. You are a very strong data sentiment analyst, and we move this up. If you are familiar with agents, LLMs, and prompts, you know that you can also send to the LLM a message where the role is not you, is not the user, so with a different role. In this case, the role is assistant. And we want to do this only to make the final results even kind of stronger, but in this case, it's just a small detail. I'm doing this mostly for showing you how many options you have here. All right, then you have some other properties like maximum number of tokens, number of completions, and so forth. So these are all things, the temperature, all things that you can usually tweak every time you use an LLM. All right, we can already execute it. So now we're sending the prompt to the LLM. All right, and here we get our answer. Here is a classification of the feedback based on the 3 categories: positive, mixed, blah, blah, blah. So the content in this case is the final answer from our LLM. If we want, you can also attach something to this. For instance, the final message from the LLM, we can save it to a Google file, or we can send it to our WhatsApp channel, whatever. All right. Another thing we can do instead of sending a message to the LLM is going towards the agentic AI. So working with agents in this case means that we're still working with an LLM, of course, but as you can see, there are a couple of differences compared to what we have just done. So first of all, we have two options: connected chat trigger mode or define below. In this case, we can inject the information from our previous node. As you can see here, data from aggregate. So we can drag and drop into this, and even better, we can go back to this one and copy our prompt and send it to the LLM. And until this point, we're essentially doing the same thing that we have done with the messenger model. So we're still sending a prompt. But the addition here is that we can, if we want, we can add a tool. What does it mean? It means that every time the agent is in need of doing something special with this data or with the task that the agent has to work on, it will be able to use a specific tool. Let's assume that we want to test if there is violence in this feedback. What we can do is use another LLM as a tool. So we can do LLM AI agent tool. And this agent, this second agent, it will be used as a tool from the first agent. And the description is AI agent that checks if there is violence in the feedback. And now we do something really interesting, which is not writing the prompt. We don't want to write the prompt for this, but instead we want to click here and let the model define this parameter. This is really interesting because essentially we are giving the agent the possibility to understand what to do with this tool and what to do exactly for this specific case. So we don't want to write a prompt like, you have this feedback, please check if there is violence. Instead, we're only giving the description of the tool, and then the agent will be able to use this specific tool, which is essentially an LLM, and decide how to frame the prompt. Now, this tool, which, as we said, is an agent, is connected to the same OpenAI model that I created before, or another one. Let's assume you want to use Claude, you want to use Anthropic because you think that it's you have special needs for this specific task. You can also use a different one. And now we go to this prompt and we add also check if there is violence in the feedback. All right. Okay, now we can execute this agent. Let's see if it works. Okay, it's calling this agent. Here we can already see that this agent, in order to work and decide if there is violence, this is our final result. The agent, in order to work and decide if there is violence in the feedback, had to use this tool, which is another agent, in order to understand if we have some sort of characteristics to decide if the feedback contains violence or not. And we also saw that there was a proper call to this tool. And this is also something that we can, this is also something we can, we can check here in the logs. In the logs, we can see all the things that happened. And in particular, we can see what the agent did exactly. So the agent was calling OpenAI chat model, and then for each row, probably, it was also using the AI agent tool. And it was using the AI agent tool because it was asking this tool, this special tool, if there is violence in it, and then using this output for the final output. All right. So now that we have a basic understanding of how to work with these tools, we can move to another workflow that I prepared for you, which is, let me switch to this Other window. Do you have questions in the meantime, Rosaria?
I have. So can you explain a bit better why we need the message model node?
The message? No, which
you had two
which one?
nodes. You had the AI agent node, and then you had the message model or something like that node.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need the message?
Yeah. So I don't need that. Indeed. Let me go back to the example. I don't need this. This is our first attempt to create a very simple agent, which this is what happens before working with an agent. So you're just creating a prompt and sending this prompt to the LLM. This specific task can be achieved with this message model. So you're sending a prompt to an LLM and you don't need anything else.
So it's just a prompt.
Yeah, it's a simple prompt. If you want, you can also add tools, because now you can also do it with this specific node. But essentially, I wanted to create something simple, like, okay, I have some data, I'm embedding this data into a prompt, and I'm sending it to the LLM. That's it. And then the second branch, which is the one that we were looking at, so eventually we can also delete this, we don't need it anymore, is the more kind of agentic AI approach. So we have a bit of reasoning happening under the hood, and the agent is able to understand when to use the AI agent tool, which is the tool that we use for checking if there is violence. And this is the next step approach.
So basically the message is for a simple problem, and then if you have a more complex problem, then you would use the AI agent.
Yeah, if you have a more complex problem that requires some sort of reasoning, that requires you to use the so-called React approach, you need an agent that is able to reason about something and then act. And in this case, the reasoning is, do I need a tool that, do I need to use a tool that is going to check if there is violence or not in this specific feedback? And the act is whether it's going to use the tool or not. So the act is, okay, I need it, I'm going to use this tool, and then thanks to this tool, I will understand if there is violence or not. There is a catch here, because in this specific case, we're going to always use this tool. So there are no, if you think about it, the agent will always decide to use this tool, because for each row, we're going to check if there is violence or not. So this is a very simple and probably useless agent, because we can simply put what we have in this tool into the first agent and do everything with one agent. But it's a simple example that does the job, just to start getting familiar with n8n and the agent node. But now we move to something a bit more complex. Not really complex, but more meaningful if we talk about agents. Okay, now we are still in n8n, but this is my instance, so the one that I'm running at home. The reason why I'm using this instance is because I have a lot of credentials for accessing Google Drive, a lot of different models, and so forth, so on. So what I want to do with this agent is very simple. This is some sort of chatbot that is able to give me information about the episodes from my data guest that we have released until now. So if you have a query about something regarding the episodes that we have released until today, you can chat with this chatbot. It will answer. How did I create this simple workflow? Which is actually really simple, but very powerful. So essentially, I have this trigger chat. This is what we're going to use here to chat with our model, with our chatbot in this chat. So we can type something and talk to the chatbot. And then we have our AI agent node, which is something we already know, so we're used to it. We are connecting this AI agent to our OpenAI chat model. If we check this AI agent, the only thing that I'm passing to it is the chat input, which is the input that we will receive from the chat. So the input that the agent will receive from the human, which is here. And now, instead of only using one tool, and instead of always using one tool, because in the previous example, we didn't really need a tool, here we have we have three options. One is the RSS read, which is reading our RSS feed from the My Data Guest from Substack. Then we have our create file from text in Google Drive, which will create a file if we want So every time we get something from the agent, we can decide if we want to create a file containing that information or not. And then we have a third tool, which is pretty much the same approach as before. This specific tool is an AI agent that checks if input text contains violence. Of course, it doesn't make sense because I don't think that we have released any episodes that is actually talking about bad episodes or anything illegal. But
I can confirm we haven't.
I don't know about what you did, Rosaria, until now, but I think we haven't done that. So yeah, of course, this will not produce anything interesting, but this is pretty much the same approach as before. Why do I like things like this? Because essentially we're using an LLM as a tool. So we're using another agent as a tool. So this agent is able to call another LLM, in this case, another agent, and decide what to do. Eventually, if this is a very complex task, it can also be another workflow. So we can also add as a tool, as you can see here on the right, we can call an n8n workflow tool. So if we want, a tool can be a whole workflow if what we want to do is really complex. All right. So this AI agent, as we said, is a tool for checking if there is violence. It can also use tools, memory, and so on. And another important addition to make this as like a real AI agentic application, almost, is the memory. So we want to have the possibility to access the previous context, so the context that we have in the chat. So we want the agent to remember what we said before. In this case, this is a simple memory, which is provided by n8n, so we're not doing anything fancy here. And you can use it, you can use this tool as it is out of the box. And what we're doing with this, simply setting this context window of length. As you can see, I set it to 10, which means how many past interactions the model receives as context. And that's pretty much it. So now this agent has the capability of remembering what we were typing in the chat. All right, in the RSS feedback, we simply have our RSS link. And also in this case, we're providing a description for this tool. The description in this case is reads data from my data guest podcast RSS. The description is something really, really important whenever you work with tools. It doesn't matter if you use n8n or LangGraph or Crew AI. You need to provide a description because the LLM or the agent needs to know what to look at, needs to know which tool to use. And in order to know that, you need some metadata connected to the tool. And that's pretty much it. We don't need anything else for the RSS. And then we have our create file. So here, I have connected my Google Drive account, and I'm telling this Google Drive node to create in the My Drive into the n8n demo directory a file called from n8n demo. This file will contain some information. We will see what exactly. How do you connect? How do you create the credentials for your Google Drive account? So what you have to do is simply click on Create Credentials and follow the documentation. One important note is that if you are using n8n Cloud, the process of adding credentials is really straightforward and painless. If you do it on your self-hosted n8n, sometimes it can be complex depending on which credentials you want to add. It's all documented, so anyhow, it's just a matter of time. But I can give a very good example. Maybe we can also write an article about that. Adding the credentials for LinkedIn, it is complex. It's really complicated. So I did it, and it takes ages if you want to do it on your self-hosted instance, because you have to go through a series of permissions and you have to go through the LinkedIn settings and so forth, so on. So it takes a while. On the other hand, if you do it on n8n Cloud, you just have to click 2 buttons and you're basically done. Which was really interesting to see, because there is a huge difference in that case. But this is what you pay if you use the n8n Cloud, I guess. All right, so we have everything at our disposal. What do you think, Rosario? Do you have questions about this workflow before we look at the results?
No, I was just surprised about the LinkedIn connector because, whatever I've tried to connect to LinkedIn has always been complicated and painful.
Yeah, I don't know what they did with n8n Cloud, what they did, what kind of agreement they have with LinkedIn, but
yeah,
doing it, connecting n8n to LinkedIn with Google n8n Cloud is a matter of clicking two buttons. And I was really surprised because my experience with the LinkedIn APIs is not pleasant. Now, I'm not talking only about n8n. I mean,
no,
in general,
yeah. No, I know.
it's really complex.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they did, but it looks like a huge, important agreement, apparently. So
let's see the results.
Yeah, let's have a look at how we can interact with this chatbot. Okay, we said that we can just type with it. So we can ask something about the episodes. Of course, it has to be something that is available in the RSS feed, which means information about the length of the episodes, the description, the title, something like this. One simple question is, can you tell me the last... can you give me info about the last My Data Guest episode? Okay, so it's running. As you can see, is thinking and using the OpenAI model, and in total decided to use one tool, which is the RSS read. And that's the only thing that we needed, right? We didn't say anything about saving the information to Google Drive or checking if there is violence. So the agent decided to not to use these tools, which is correct. We didn't have to. We only had to use the RSS feed. And of course, it was updating the memory with our message. That's why we have the tiny 2 here. It did update the model, the memory with 2 messages, our message and the output of the model. Now let's have a look at the result. So this was our query. And then we get an answer thanks to the information. And it says the last episode is episode 8, Beyond AI Automation Real Impact. It was published on December 10. So these are the RSS feed, which you get what you get. I don't know. Is it correct, Rosaria? Is it the last one? Doesn't look like the last one.
No, it isn't, but I think we haven't updated.
Because we haven't updated the RSS.
Yeah. So...
And you get a list of, so it's creating the details, the summary, and so forth, so on. Another thing we can do is, okay, we also get the image. Another thing we can do is, can you tell us the longest episode so far? I'm not saying anything about My Data Guest now. I'm not saying, tell me the last episode about My Data Guest, because it is in the context. And thanks to this context, we're able to, have more information about what happened before. So the model will, as you can see, as you will see in a few seconds, the model will access the memory once again and the RSS read. Okay, I'm running it. The agent is thinking, is accessing the memory. Okay, and it says episode 5, AI for Executives, is the longest so far. Okay. Now,
that was run by you.
Yeah, it was mine. And now, since this is in the context, we can keep talking about it. We can say, is this episode okay? Who is hosting this episode? We have this information here, the 2 of us, based on the RSS feed, is accessing the memory, is not accessing the RSS read. It doesn't have to, right? It says, okay, this episode is hosted by Rosaria and Alessandro. Now we can do more. We can say, did this episode contain violence? Now it will access the memory. It won't, of course, use the Google Drive, because it doesn't have to. But if everything goes well, it will access the AI agent tool, because now it's time to do it.
We can only hope.
Let's see. It's using this tool. That's correct. It does not contain violence, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it focuses on transformative power and data artificial intelligence. Okay, that's correct.
Right.
Okay, so now the last thing is to try to write something in Google Drive. So what I can do is, okay, write this info in a Google Drive file. Okay, it is using this tool because now we are asking to use Google Drive. And it says, okay, this information has been successfully saved here. Let's see if this link works. Usually, it works. Okay, now we have all the information that were added by the agent. Let's go back to this and let's reset everything. And let's do another thing. Tell me the shortest episode from my data guest. Check if there is violence and save to Google Drive file. I want to delete this file. Don't know if I can do it with this. Okay, let's create another one. Let's see what happens. Okay, now what I want to do is to use the agent and trigger all the tools that we have in it. So eventually, if everything goes well with this specific message we're sending to the agent, we will trigger all the tools that we have at our disposal. Okay, it is using all the tools, accessing RSS feed, also writing to Google Drive, and checking if there is violence. All right. Summary, episode title, violence check, saved file. And if we check the logs, we can see that the agent was accessing the memory. In this case, it was saving information into the memory. It was calling the OpenAI model, was calling the RSS feed tool. And then it was updating still the memory with the output from the LLM, and it was accessing the tools that we have for writing into Google Drive and checking if there is violence. All right, now we can look into the file that was created okay, and this is exactly what we needed. So this is the updated file. All right, so where is the magic here? The magic is that we didn't write code at all. So we only had to play with these nodes, connect the nodes. Of course, you're also looking at the work of someone who spent some time working with n8n. So that's why it is kind of smooth. But I think it's easy to achieve this result. And you have so many possibilities with all these connectors. In this case, we are keeping everything with n8n, apart from writing into Google Drive. But for the rest, we're not really using triggers from WhatsApp, Telegram, from a website, from RSS. One example is that we can use the RSS read, the RSS link URL as a trigger for our automation. So every time we have a new episode released, we can use that trigger to do something. Within this test, we're using the trigger to automatically create posts for LinkedIn. So we can do a lot of different things like this. And I think the possibilities are kind of a lot. Of course, the limitations are that if you want to do custom things, if you want to do a lot of data processing, data analysis, it's not really the right tool. This is a tool that works very well for orchestrating and automating tasks. But the beauty of it is that you have a lot of connectors. So you don't have to think about creating these connectors, but you just have to think about the business problem you want to solve. You put everything together and then you have your solution. Do you have questions about this, Rosario?
Yeah, can you write comments? For example, the instructions on how to run it and use it.
To run this specific workflow?
So what it is for, like, I use your workflow, what do I know what it does?
You mean comment in the workflow itself? So what you can do is creating this sticky note. So you can create notes here. And what I usually do is these are tools. So I do something like this and kind of wrap everything into it. So to create sections. This is something I use a lot And I see many people working with n8n using the sticky notes, also for dividing different sections of the workflow. Yeah.
And then another question, besides this example, what did you use n8n for?
So what I'm using n8n, you mean for my private
An
projects?
application, yeah, for other projects.
Many of the applications are essentially based on using local LLMs that I'm running on my Raspberry for simple tasks. So imagine that I want to do a summary of all the mails that I received today. So this is something real, actually. A problem that I have is that every time I receive an email, sometimes I open it and I'm like, okay, I see, where is this? Is this coming from this person? I know what is it about. I'm gonna think about this later, and then I forget about that email. And this is a very bad habit because I should read it when I'm ready to take actions, I guess. But what I did in the past was collecting all the emails that I received during the last day, and then get a summary with information about which actions I have to take and if this email requires action. But the problem is I don't want to send my emails to OpenAI or Anthropic. So I want to keep this local. So what I'm doing is running a very small LLM on my Raspberry Pi, which is a tiny laptop, tiny machine. And then I'm also running n8n there. So what I can do is using nodes like this one. See if I remember. Let's see if I can find it here. Llama. Yeah. So with this, message a model, I have a list of models. In this case, I'm using this Quen 2.5. This is a very small model that is running on my Raspberry. And then I use it to summarize my emails and decide if I have to take actions. And the beauty of it is that on one side is kind of slow because it's a small model. On the other side, everything is local. So my n8n does some stuff, then I get the message from my Telegram bot, but everything stays local. So I don't have to send personal information to any LLM provider. And then I do a lot of things with Telegram, like automations. I get information from Telegram. I summarize stuff. I built this bot for a couple of friends that we basically use it for creating jokes and images, and everything is running through this n8n instance that I have on my machine. Also in this case, the problem is that I don't want to spend too much money for these jokes, and I don't want to use OpenAI. So I'm using this local model, which is low, but it's okay for those kind of tasks. For many of these asynchronous tasks, using a local LLM with n8n is perfect. And if you want to go a step further, you can run n8n on your machine and use Mistral 7B or even a better model and do complex tasks with it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. I think this concludes the demo. Of course, there are a lot of details that we didn't want to show about n8n because it was more about showing how to use agents with n8n. But maybe if people are interested, we can also do another how to use n8n demo in the future.
You mean for AI workflow rather than AI agents?
I mean, in general, n8n, like for orchestrating stuff, depending on, what the people from my data guest want to see.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Before you mentioned the prompt engineering at some point, so I would like to say that we are going to dedicate the month of March to prompt engineering episodes. So if you want to know more, connect in March. Okay, I think we can conclude here. We are definitely beyond the time. So thank you very much again, Alessandro, for this demo. Thank you to the audience for listening to us until the end. Bye.
Thank you, Rosaria. Bye-bye.